Hello, this is Caleb Thomas, and today we're going to be talking about Amarillo, Texas, for my Geographic Perspective project. Let's get started, shall we? So, for the environmental setting, we specifically Amarillo is located in the northern Texas Panhandle, which you can see is the area highlighted red. It's in the southern Great Plains, wide open spaces, very flat land, just kind of everywhere. And the climate, specifically, it is dominated by a massive continental air mass, dry air covering over North America continent coming south from Canada, which interacts with this warm, humid air from the Gulf of Mexico. And that kind of dominates the Great Plain climate. So you can have great variance in day to day temperatures between night and day, and even during seasons. But still, regular climate. It's hot in the summer, it can get very hot. And down in the panhandle part of Texas, it can get cool in the winter, but also it can get very cold sometimes. Sometimes Arctic air breaks down out of Canada and travels all the way that far, and you can have some blizzard like conditions in Amarillo. So, to recap, just flat Great Plains area, hot, cold, it just has all sorts of weather. So, yeah, I was talking about historical settlement now. Well, like any other things in North America, we begin with Native Americans. Now, in the specific region of Amarillo, Texas, there weren't many permanent Native American settlements. There were hunter-gatherer societies in the prehistoric time, hunting mammoths and all that stuff, megafauna. But no like large-scale farming settlements that typically arise when you have like civilization areas. And one of the first well-known Native American groups that it was from the region or they moved around in the region, that would be the Apache tribes. They came from the west and they moved further down. Some went to New Mexico and even further south to Mexico. Others went around and looked into the northern panhandle part of Texas. Other parts we have again early Spanish exploration, and there wasn't a whole lot to do in this part of Texas. Most people who explored, they weren't on their way to settle or colonize. They were on their way to find treasure and explore, find treasure, resources, stuff to make them rich and wealthy. They weren't out there to truly study the people and uh, try to collectivize crops and all that. Specifically, the city of Amarillo, it was not founded into the late 19th century, so that's about 800s, so about like 1890s, and it was originally like most large Great Plains cities in the Wild West area. It was basically a cattle depot. You would drive your cattle to the railroad line, and they would ship them, to meat packing places like Chicago, where they would, kill the animals on site and then pack it and then ship it from there. So that's how it started. It was just a railroad town. But eventually, other natural resources were found, and that brought in a large enough population to keep the city going. So let's talk about this economics. Again, it's in the Great Plains, so it was again kind of silly as it's dominated by agriculture. So you still have meat packing plants, but now the meat packing plants they don't have to ship them to Chicago. They can just ship them. They don't have to ship them at all. The meat packing plants they actually moved from Chicago to like the local areas where the cattle was because it was cheaper. Now that transportation allowed for fresh meat to be kept longer, so you didn't have to kill the animal right there and then move it on. You can kill it and then freeze it, and then you can ship it anywhere. So that cut down on costs. So meat packing is still important to the area as a primary base for the economy. Other primary sectors, there is still some oil, a large helium production in the area. I think the U.S. Helium supply is located in Amarillo. So just something to facts. And for the culture and current issues, um, Amarillo tries to put on this air of being the real Texas. When you think of Texas, you tend to think of, the stereotypical image of, wide open spaces, cowboys running around, which isn't true in some parts of Texas, like Amarillo is. But Texas is a large place. There's, the Mex-American places in the south. There's the forest regions in the east, the coastal areas, that have a different kind of culture than what is Texan. So it's just weird that, we think of Texas, but it's a huge place. There's so much to see. But apparently, if you want to go to Amarillo, and that's where the real Texas is, that's what they try to tell you. Um, Amarillo is experiencing right now population increases because all the economic things like the meat packing and all the other primary sectors, they're going to need people to work in them, factories and all that. And not many people want to work in meat packing factories. So, of course, that's where you get a lot of immigrant labor, such as Latino and Asian populations moving in. And, of course, like most things in North America, once you bring in a local population, with the older people, they're like, I don't know if I like this area changing all of a sudden. That's not good. But I hope that we've learned in this class that change is good, and there's nothing wrong with a changing demographic, just changing culture, because it just adds character to a good region. I'm sure Amarillo in the future will be proud to have a more Latino and maybe a more Asian influence into the permanent culture than just being the good old Texas. All right, I think that's it. I'd like to thank you all for your time, and I had a good class. I hope you all did as well. Thank you.